Everyone mocked the silent Omega. Then the Alpha King entered holding her torn necklace. In the court of King Kaelin, whispers of power and fear flowed like a river, reaching every corner, leaving no one untouched. Here, strength was measured not in kindness or heart but in dominance and command. And in this world of shadows, Alara walked quietly, almost unseen. Alara was known to everyone and noticed by none. Her silence was her shield and her curse. She did not speak much because words had always failed her, either twisted by others or ignored entirely. She moved like a shadow through the halls, carrying herself with a gentle grace that drew few eyes. Even so, those who looked often mocked her, calling her timid and weak. She was the Omega of the court, the one who followed rather than led, who bent rather than stood. Yet there was more to Alara than the court could ever understand. Around her neck hung a necklace, delicate and old, with a faint silver glow under the moonlight. It had belonged to her family for generations, passed down from mother to daughter, each carrying the weight of a hidden legacy. The nobles of Elendor did not see it as anything important. They saw only a timid girl wearing an ornament she could not possibly protect. That morning, as the sun tried to pierce the eternal twilight, the court gathered in the grand hall for the Feast of Shadows, a ceremony where strength was displayed and weaknesses ridiculed. The walls were carved with the images of kings and warriors long past, their eyes seeming to judge all who entered. Torches lined the hall, casting flickering shadows that danced across the marble floor. Alara stood near the back, her fingers gripping the edge of her cloak, her eyes downcast. A group of nobles, led by the haughty Lord Vaelin, noticed her immediately. They whispered cruel words under their breaths, letting laughter escape when they believed she could not hear. "Is that the Omega girl?" Vaelin hissed to his companions. "I've never seen anyone so quiet, so afraid of their own shadow." "Quiet or not," another whispered, "she can't even hold her head high. Pathetic." Alara's ears burned, but she did not look up. She had learned long ago that confronting such mockery would only draw more attention, and not in her favor. She kept her silence, her one refuge, and let their words wash over her like rain. The ceremony began, and King Kaelin entered the hall. He was a figure of power and majesty, tall and imposing, with eyes like storm clouds and hair as dark as raven feathers. His presence was absolute. The room seemed to breathe differently when he walked. Nobles fell silent, and even the loudest jeers faded into uneasy murmurs. Yet despite his power, Kaelin did not initially notice Alara. He walked past rows of nobles, his gaze sweeping across the hall, assessing strength and loyalty. Alara remained where she was, a shadow at the edge of his vision. She felt the warmth of his gaze, though he did not stop. For a moment she allowed herself to imagine that perhaps she could remain unseen, a ghost in a court that demanded presence. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. Lord Vaelin, emboldened by the laughter of his peers, stepped forward. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing low but with a cruel smile, "may I present the Omega, silent as a stone, trembling like a leaf. Surely she cannot even carry her own weight through the day." The nobles around him laughed, and some threw whispers that carried through the hall. Alara's fingers clenched around her necklace, her only comfort, the heirloom that reminded her she was more than they believed. Kaelin's gaze finally settled on her. There was a long, tense silence as he regarded the girl at the back of the hall. Her head was bowed, her eyes focused on the floor, yet there was a quiet dignity in the way she held herself. He did not speak at first, letting the weight of his presence fall upon the room. The nobles, unaccustomed to hesitation, shifted uneasily. "Lord Vaelin," Kaelin said finally, his voice low and steady, carrying a weight that made the hall fall silent. "Do you mock what you cannot understand?" Vaelin faltered, taken aback. He tried to force a smile, but the air around the king pressed down upon him like a storm about to break. Alara felt her heart race, not from fear of the nobles, but from the strange warmth of the king's attention. She had never been seen like this, truly seen, not for a long time, and yet her courage did not fully awaken. She remained silent, unsure if she was allowed to speak, if her words mattered at all. The mockery continued in subtle ways. One of the younger nobles tried to snatch her necklace, thinking to humiliate her further. Elara froze, a cold dread creeping into her chest. The necklace was torn from her neck, slipping from her fingers like water. It fell to the floor with a soft clang, the silver light dimming instantly. A hush fell across the hall. The nobles, for the first time, sensed that something had shifted, though they could not say what. Elara's eyes filled with tears, but she did not cry aloud. She could not let them see weakness, not now. Before she could recover, Kalen stepped forward, his shadow falling over the small figure of the Omega. In his hand he held her torn necklace, lifting it so all could see. The hall seemed to hold its breath. Even the torch flames flickered nervously, as if the world itself recognized the moment's importance. "Enough," he said, his voice carrying through the hall like rolling thunder. "Enough of your mockery." Elara looked up, her eyes meeting Kalen's. There was no anger in him, only an intensity that pierced through her very being. It was as though he could see every fear, every hidden thought, every unspoken word. For the first time, she felt that her silence was not a weakness but a shield, one that this king recognized. Valen stepped back, a flush of fear coloring his face. The other nobles exchanged uneasy glances. The balance of power in the hall had shifted, and they could not yet understand how or why. Kalen extended his hand, offering the torn necklace back to Elara. His eyes softened slightly, an almost imperceptible smile tugging at his lips. "You were never silent," he said, his voice carrying just enough for her to hear. "They just refused to listen." Elara's fingers trembled as she took the necklace from him. The silver glow returned, brighter this time, wrapping around her like a protective veil. She felt warmth spreading through her chest, a strange and powerful comfort. She was not invisible. She was not weak, not anymore. The nobles did not know what to do. Their laughter had faded, replaced by awe and fear. And Elara, standing quietly with the necklace in her hand, felt a stirring she had never known before, a spark of courage that perhaps she could wield the power that had always been hers, if only she could learn how. As the ceremony continued, Kalen remained near her, a silent guardian. The whispers of the court buzzed like angry insects, but for the first time, Elara felt untouchable, not because she was strong yet, but because someone powerful saw her for what she truly was. And in the shadowed corners of the hall, unseen by all but the most attuned, the necklace pulsed faintly, as if recognizing its master had finally returned. It whispered of ancient bloodlines, hidden magic, and the curses that had lingered for generations. Elara clutched it close to her heart, her silence now heavy with possibility. She did not know what lay ahead, but she understood one thing clearly. Her life was no longer hers alone. The Alpha King had entered her story, holding her torn necklace, and with him came a path that would change everything. Outside the hall, the storm clouds gathered, dark and eternal, a mirror of the tension inside. And as Elara glanced up at the flickering torches, she realized that the world had shifted. She was no longer the Omega they mocked. She was something more, something dangerous, something unseen yet unstoppable. And somewhere deep in the shadows, a voice whispered, "This is only the beginning." The storm outside the castle walls rumbled like a warning, rolling over the kingdom in waves of shadow and thunder. Inside, the grand hall of Elendor was quiet, though the echoes of the Feast of Shadows still lingered. The nobles whispered in corners, their eyes flicking nervously toward Elara. Even the bravest among them dared not speak too loudly, for the Alpha King's gaze still held the room in a silent, commanding grip. Elara stood near the edge of the hall, her fingers clutching the silver chain of her necklace. Its glow pulsed faintly against her chest, as if alive, as if it knew that its true master had finally returned. The warmth she felt when Kaelin had handed it back did not fade. Instead, it lingered like a promise, a tether to something greater than herself. She dared not look directly at him yet, for the power in his eyes was both frightening and magnetic. Kaelin moved with slow, deliberate steps toward the throne, the weight of his presence enough to still the air. Each noble bowed instinctively, their fear palpable. Alara could hear the whispered speculations. Some said the king was testing the girl. Others believed she carried a hidden curse. None knew the truth, that the Omega they had mocked carried the bloodline of long-forgotten magic, a legacy tied to shadows and the power of kings long past. After a tense moment, Kaelin sat upon the throne, his posture regal yet relaxed, his gaze still on Alara. She could feel the weight of it, heavy and impossible to ignore. She wished she could vanish into the shadows, but something held her in place. A thread of courage, fragile yet persistent, had begun to weave itself into her heart. "Step forward," Kaelin commanded softly, yet the room still flinched at his words. Alara hesitated, then obeyed. Each step echoed through the hall, like the beat of a drum announcing her presence. The noble's laughter had vanished, replaced with a tense silence that seemed to press in on her from all sides. Kaelin regarded her carefully. "Your silence," he said, "has been mistaken for weakness, but silence is not absence. It is patience, it is listening, and it is power. You have more than you know." Alara's chest tightened. He spoke with a calm certainty that unsettled her. For a lifetime she had been told she was nothing. And now here was a man, a king, telling her she was more than they all believed. The warmth she had felt when he restored her necklace flared into something brighter, something almost unbearable. Before she could respond, a sudden commotion erupted. Lord Valen, pale with anger and embarrassment, stepped forward. "This girl is nothing. She is weak, silent, and unworthy of attention," he shouted. His voice carried across the hall like a clap of thunder, though it was powerless against Kaelin's presence. Kaelin rose from his throne, moving closer to the center of the hall. The sheer force of his aura caused nobles to stumble backward. Even Valen's allies hesitated, fear overtaking arrogance. "You dare speak of what you do not understand," Kaelin said, his voice low and steady. "You dare mock that which holds the blood of magic long forgotten. Know this: strength is not in cruelty, and power is not in laughter. Step aside or be removed." Valen faltered, and the room seemed to hold its breath. Alara felt a strange surge of confidence as she watched Kaelin. Not because she believed she was strong yet, but because she understood that someone had seen her, truly seen her, for the first time in her life. The silence she had carried for years was no longer a mark of weakness. It was a shield, recognized by the only person who mattered. The storm outside grew louder, lightning cutting through the twilight sky. Shadows danced along the walls of the hall as though the world itself waited for her next move. Alara's fingers brushed the necklace, and it pulsed warmly, as if encouraging her. She realized then that the necklace was more than a relic. It was a connection, a guide, a part of her that had always been waiting to awaken. Kaelin stepped closer, his gaze softening as he addressed her directly. "Do you know why I brought you here?" he asked quietly, so that only she could hear. Alara shook her head, her voice caught in her throat. She did not know if she dared speak yet. "Because the world has overlooked you for far too long," Kaelin said. "And I will not allow it to continue. You are not weak, Alara. You are unseen, yes, but being unseen is not nothing. It is preparation." Her heart raced at the sound of her name on his lips. It was the first time anyone had called her by her true name in years, without mockery, without disdain. Her silence, her patience, her quiet observation, it all mattered. For the first time she felt that she might belong somewhere, but the court would not yield so easily. The nobles whispered in corners, plotting. Some sought to undermine her, others simply feared what she might become. And the necklace around her neck pulsed again, a faint glow responding to the tension in the room. Shadows around her seemed to shift, as if alive, whispering secrets of the past. Valen spat, trying to mask his fear with anger. You cannot favor a girl who has done nothing to prove herself. Kalen's eyes narrowed. Prove herself, he repeated. She has proven more than you ever will. Courage is not in speech. It is in the willingness to stand, even when the world mocks you. You have never understood this, Lord Valen, and perhaps you never will. Alara's fingers tightened around her necklace again. Something deep inside her stirred, a sense of power she had never acknowledged before. The warmth from the necklace spread through her chest, and for a fleeting moment she felt the strength of generations behind her. She realized that the mockery she had endured was not a measure of her worth, but a test of patience, a preparation for the moment she would finally stand. Kalen moved closer to her, placing a hand near her shoulder but not touching. His presence was enough. The court felt it. The nobles whispered nervously. No one dared move closer, and Valen's face paled. You have been underestimated, Kalen said softly, but no longer. Stand with me or step aside. Alara's eyes met his, and in that gaze she found a strange and terrifying courage. For the first time, she felt that she might be able to step out of the shadows she had always occupied. The necklace pulsed brighter, a heartbeat of silver light that seemed to echo her own. Suddenly, a distant sound echoed through the hall, the creak of doors, a whisper of movement. The nobles turned, wary, sensing an unknown presence. Shadows shifted along the walls unnaturally, and a chill ran through the room. The air thickened, heavy with magic, and the necklace around Alara's neck glowed steadily, as though recognizing a danger only she could sense. Kalen's gaze sharpened, and he reached out, still without touching her, letting the warmth of his presence guide her. "Do you feel it?" he asked quietly. Alara nodded, her heart pounding. "Something is coming," she whispered, her voice barely audible, yet for the first time it carried strength. The shadows in the corners of the hall seemed to stretch and writhe, forming shapes that whispered secrets too old to understand. The nobles gasped, some falling to their knees in fear. Even Kalen's warriors stepped back slightly, sensing the same ancient power that stirred around Alara. "Hold fast," Kalen said, his voice firm and unwavering. "Do not let fear take you." Alara swallowed, drawing on a courage she did not know she possessed. She clutched the necklace, feeling the pulse of her ancestors, their strength, their patience, their survival. In that moment she was no longer just a silent Omega. She was something more. She was awakening. The shadows moved closer, drawn to the necklace, to her. And then, in a sudden flicker of light and darkness, the hall was thrown into chaos. A figure, cloaked in black and unseen before, surged forward, reaching for her. Kalen acted instantly, stepping between them. His hand moved like lightning, blocking the figure, his presence radiating power so absolute that the intruder faltered. The necklace around Alara's neck glowed fiercely, as if responding to the danger, casting silvery light across the hall. Alara's chest raced, and yet she did not run. Something inside her had shifted. She felt connected to the king, to her lineage, to the power she had always feared. The world no longer seemed to be something she hid from. It was something she could face. The intruder vanished as suddenly as they appeared, leaving the hall trembling in silence. The nobles whispered, afraid and awed, uncertain of what had just occurred. The shadows lingered restless, but they did not move closer now. Kalen turned to Alara, his expression unreadable but intense. "This is only the beginning," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper meant only for her. "You are not yet ready to understand your full power, but you will. And when you do, nothing will be able to stop you or us." Alara nodded, clutching the necklace, her pulse still racing. She felt a thrill, a mixture of fear and determination, and for the first time she realized that the silence she had carried for so long was not emptiness. It was a foundation, a preparation, a strength. And as the storm raged outside, lightning illuminating the castle walls, Alara understood something she had never believed possible. She was no longer alone, and she was no longer weak. Her journey had just begun. The castle of Elendor was quiet after the chaos of the intruder. Yet the silence was heavy, filled with anticipation and unease. Shadows lingered in the corners of the hall, moving as if alive, sensing the power that had awakened in Alara. The nobles had retreated to their chambers, muttering nervously about the strange events. Even the bravest knights glanced over their shoulders, wary of the unseen force that had swept through the court. Alara stood near the throne, her fingers tightening around the silver necklace that had been torn and restored. Its glow was steady now, like the heartbeat of something ancient and protective. She felt the warmth radiating through her, a comfort that eased the tension in her chest. Yet beneath the comfort was a thrill she did not fully understand. The pulse of power that had long lain dormant inside her was beginning to stir. King Kalen remained near her, his presence a steady anchor. His gaze was calm but intense, watching her as if he could see every flicker of doubt and every spark of courage. "You felt it, didn't you?" he asked softly. Alara nodded. "Yes, something came and I felt strange, strong." "Like I could," she trailed off, unsure how to explain the feeling that surged through her chest and into her limbs. Kalen's lips curved slightly. "You can. That strength is yours, Alara. It has always been yours. The necklace is a guide, a reminder of the blood that runs in your veins. You are not weak. You are hidden power." She stared at him, unsure whether to trust the words or fear them. All her life, people had told her she was powerless, insignificant, quiet to the point of invisibility. And now a king, this formidable, terrifying man, was telling her she had been hiding strength all along. The hall remained silent, the storm outside echoing in the wind and thunder. Shadows crept along the walls as if listening, waiting. Alara felt a pull in her chest, a need to understand the force that had responded to danger. Slowly she raised her hands, looking at them as though they might betray her. Kalen's gaze followed every movement. "Do not fear it," he said. "You are learning. Power is not always loud or destructive. Sometimes it is quiet, patient like you. Sometimes it waits until the moment it is needed most." A faint glow emanated from the necklace again, responding to her hands. It was soft at first, then brighter, as if encouraging her to reach further, to embrace what she had never known. Alara took a deep breath, her chest tightening with a mixture of fear and excitement. "Try," Kalen whispered, a gentle but commanding tone that carried across the hall. Alara closed her eyes and focused. She thought of the intruder, the sudden danger that had come for her and the fear she had felt. She did not want to feel small, weak, or invisible ever again. Slowly, she lifted her hands, letting the energy within her flow, guided by the necklace. A faint shimmer appeared around her fingers, delicate like morning mist, then stronger, more solid, swirling around her hands. Alara gasped, startled by the sensation. The shadows in the corners of the hall shifted again, but this time they did not frighten her. They seemed to watch, curious, respectful. Kalen's eyes softened as he observed her. "You see, it listens, it responds. You do not need to fight blindly, you need only guide it." Alara opened her eyes, and the shimmer around her fingers expanded, spreading across the floor like silver threads of light. The nobles peeking from behind doors gasped, whispers spreading through the corridors. Even the guards stood still, their weapons lowering slightly as they sensed the awakening. Her heart pounded. She had never felt so alive, so connected to something greater than herself. Yet alongside the thrill was fear, the realization that she had no full control, that the power could surge beyond her if she lost focus. Kalen stepped closer, placing a steadying hand near her shoulder again, not touching but close enough that his presence anchored her. Control comes with understanding, and understanding comes with patience. You are stronger than you know, Alara, but strength without clarity is dangerous. Alara nodded, her fingers trembling slightly as she let the energy settle. The silver light dimmed, retreating back into the necklace. She felt a mixture of pride and uncertainty. She had glimpsed her power, but she knew it was only the beginning. "Come with me," Kaelin said suddenly. "There is a place in the castle you must see. It will teach you more than words ever could." Curious and cautious, Alara followed. The halls grew narrower and darker, the torchlight flickering against stone walls covered in ancient carvings. Shadows clung to the corners, moving as if alive, whispering secrets of old battles, old curses, old kings. They reached a large, arched door, carved with images of warriors and mystical creatures. Kaelin pushed it open, revealing a chamber bathed in pale, silver light. Inside, the walls were lined with mirrors, each reflecting not just their own images but scenes from the past, moments of courage, sacrifice, and loss from generations long gone. "This chamber shows truth," Kaelin said. "Not just what is, but what could be. It is a place for those who carry power quietly, those who must understand before they act." Alara stepped inside, her eyes widening at the reflections. She saw herself, but older, stronger, standing with confidence she had never known. She saw shadows bending to her will, whispers of magic that she could feel but not yet fully comprehend. And she saw danger, intruders, betrayal, and challenges that would test every part of her being. "This is you," Kaelin said softly, his gaze fixed on her. "Not the Omega they mocked, not the quiet girl they ignored. This is who you are meant to become." Alara swallowed hard. The images were overwhelming, showing not just potential but responsibility. She felt fear again, but this time it was accompanied by determination. She could not turn away from what she was. She could not let the kingdom or herself remain small and powerless. Suddenly, a whisper echoed through the chamber. Alara froze, recognizing the sound not as human but as a voice of the shadows themselves. "You have returned," it said, faint and distant yet clear. "The bloodline awakens." Her heart pounded. The necklace glowed faintly as if responding to the voice. Shadows stirred, wrapping themselves around the edges of the mirrors, watching her. Alara felt a pull deep in her chest, a connection she could neither explain nor deny. She was tied to something far older and larger than herself. Kaelin stepped beside her, his presence steadying. "Do not fear it," he said. "It will not harm you unless you let it. You are its master, but you must learn its ways." Alara nodded slowly. Her fingers brushed the necklace again, feeling its warmth and pulse. She realized that the power she had glimpsed earlier was only a fraction of what she could achieve. The shadows, the light, the whispers, they were all pieces of her inheritance, waiting for her to claim them. Hours passed as Kaelin guided her through the chamber, teaching her to focus, to channel her energy, to feel the flow of the magic that ran through her veins. Alara's confidence grew with each step, though she knew the journey was far from over. She had faced mockery, danger, and doubt, but she had survived, and now she was beginning to awaken. When they finally left the chamber, the storm outside had passed, leaving the world under a pale, silver moon. The castle seemed quieter now, almost reverent, as though the stones themselves recognized the change that had begun within its walls. Kaelin led Alara back to the grand hall, where the nobles had returned, whispering nervously among themselves. They sensed the shift, though they could not understand it fully. The Omega they had mocked now moved with a subtle strength, a presence that demanded acknowledgement even without a word. "Remember this," Kaelin said quietly as they entered. "They will test you as they always have, but you are no longer the girl they can dismiss. You are seen, and they will not forget it." Alara's chest swelled with a mixture of pride and resolve. For the first time, she felt that she had a place in this world, not as a shadow, not as someone to be overlooked, but as someone who could stand, who could act, who could shape her destiny. And as she walked through the hall, the silver necklace glowing faintly against her chest, she felt the pull of destiny tightening around her. Shadows whispered and shifted. The wind outside carried the promise of trials yet to come, and her heart thumped with anticipation. She was awakening, and the world would soon know it. For the first time, Alara realized that power was not just about strength. It was about courage, patience, and understanding, and she had more than enough of all three to face whatever lay ahead. Yet somewhere, deep in the corridors of the castle, a presence stirred, a shadow older and darker than any she had encountered. It watched, waiting, sensing the awakening of the Omega, and when it moved, the kingdom of Elendor would tremble in ways no one could yet imagine. Alara held the necklace tightly, feeling warmth, power, and a spark of something else. A connection, not just to the king beside her, but to the forces that had always waited in the shadows. She was ready to step forward, ready to face the challenges, ready to awaken fully. The journey was far from over, and the night was just beginning. The dawn broke over Elendor with a silver light, piercing the lingering shadows that clung to the castle. The storm from the night before had passed, leaving a cold clarity in the air. The grand hall, once a place of whispered mockery and fear, now hummed with anticipation. The nobles had gathered again, though this time with cautious eyes, sensing that the Omega they had once ridiculed was no longer the same girl. Alara stood near the center of the hall, her necklace glowing softly against her chest. Its light pulsed with her heartbeat, steady and confident, a sign of the power she had learned to awaken. She had spent the night in the Chamber of Mirrors with Kaelin, training, learning to channel her energy, to focus it, to recognize the strength within her. She was no longer silent, though she did not need words to assert herself. The aura she carried now spoke louder than any voice could. Kaelin stood beside her, tall and unwavering. His presence was calm but commanding, the perfect balance to the quiet force that had grown within Alara. Together they faced the court, the nobles, and the unknown watchers hidden in the shadows. "Today," Kaelin said, his voice carrying through the hall like thunder, "we face those who would test us, the ones who mock, who fear, who challenge the balance of this kingdom. But they will learn that power is not always loud. Sometimes it is silent, patient, unstoppable." A murmur passed through the nobles, fear and awe mingling in their whispers. Some glanced nervously at one another, sensing the shift in power but uncertain of its full extent. Alara's chest swelled with a mixture of pride and resolve. She was ready. Suddenly, the shadows along the walls began to writhe and twist unnaturally. The air grew colder, heavier, and a sense of danger swept through the hall. The necklace pulsed brightly, its silver light reaching out as if to warn and protect. Alara's fingers brushed it, feeling warmth and power flowing into her hands. From the far end of the hall, a figure emerged, cloaked in darkness, unseen until now. It moved with silent grace, its presence radiating menace. The nobles shrank back, fear evident in every face. Even Kaelin's guards instinctively drew their swords, though their confidence faltered under the weight of the unseen force. Alara stepped forward, her chest tight but her resolve firm. "I will not let you harm this kingdom," she said, her voice steady, carrying a quiet authority that silenced even the whispers. The dark figure paused, as if acknowledging her. Shadows twisted around it, forming shapes that reflected past betrayals, ancient battles, and the weight of curses long forgotten. The air shimmered with tension, thick and electric. Kaelin placed a hand near her shoulder, a grounding presence. "Focus, Alara," he said softly. "Do not fear it, control it, guide it." Alara closed her eyes and drew a deep breath. She let the power she had trained with flow through her, guiding it with her will. The necklace pulsed fiercely, and the shadows around the intruder began to recoil slightly, as if recognizing the strength in her. "You carry the bloodline of kings and sorcerers," the dark figure said, its voice echoing through the hall like a cold wind. "Do you think you can command what you do not fully understand?" "I may not understand everything yet," Alara replied, her eyes opening with a silver light reflecting her resolve. "But I will learn, and I will protect what is mine to protect." The figure laughed, a hollow, chilling sound that sent shivers down the spines of everyone present. Shadows surged forward, reaching for Alara, testing her control. But she remained calm, her hands steady, her focus unwavering. The silver light from her necklace spread outward, forming a shield that pushed the darkness back. Kalen stepped forward, his sword drawn, his presence a pillar of strength beside her. "Stand together," he said. "You are not alone." Alara nodded, drawing power from him as much as from herself. Together, they faced the darkness. She felt the energy within her respond to his presence, intertwining, harmonizing. The hall filled with silver light and shadow, a dance of power and patience, of courage and understanding. The dark figure surged again, more forceful this time, but Alara met it without fear. Her necklace glowed brighter, and the shadows around her moved with a will of their own, forming shapes that defended and countered the attacks. She realized then that she was not just guiding her own power, she was commanding the magic of generations, of the kingdom itself. With a final surge, she directed the energy forward. The shadows recoiled, retreating into the corners, unable to withstand the combined force of her will and Kaelin's presence. The intruder stumbled, then vanished completely, leaving the hall in stunned silence. Alara lowered her hands, the glow of the necklace dimming to a gentle pulse. She looked around at the nobles, many of whom now knelt, not out of fear but in awe and respect. The Omega they had mocked was no longer silent. She was a force to be reckoned with. Kaelin stepped closer, his gaze softening as he looked at her. "You have done well," he said quietly. "Stronger than I expected, yet still patient. You are ready for what comes next." Alara felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mixture of pride and something else, a connection, deeper and more intimate than she had ever felt. She looked at Kaelin and saw not just a king, but someone who believed in her when no one else had. The weight of years of mockery and doubt began to lift, replaced by a sense of belonging and purpose. The nobles began to speak, hesitant at first, then more boldly. They acknowledged her strength, her courage, and her power. Some still whispered about the ancient bloodline, the magic, the legacy she carried, but now it was with respect, not mockery. The hall, once filled with derision, was now filled with reverence. Kaelin reached out, placing the silver necklace back around her neck, straightening it with care. "This belongs to you," he said softly. "As much as your power does, as much as your courage does. Remember it." Alara touched the necklace, feeling its warmth and energy, and for the first time she understood that it was not just a symbol of her past but a guide for her future. She could face whatever came next, not as a silent Omega, but as a guardian, a leader, and a force of change. The storm outside had cleared completely, leaving the sky silver and calm. The castle seemed transformed, no longer just a place of shadow and whispers, but a home where power and courage could coexist. Alara stood beside Kaelin, their presence together a signal to the court and the kingdom. A new chapter had begun. Yet, even in the calm, there was a sense of anticipation. The dark forces she had faced were only a beginning. There were greater challenges, older curses, and unseen threats waiting beyond the walls of the castle. But she was no longer afraid. With Kaelin by her side and the power she had awakened within herself, she was ready for them all. As they looked out over the kingdom from the highest tower, the silver light of dawn illuminating their faces, Kaelin spoke softly. "The world will test you, Alara, but it will also recognize your strength. You are no longer silent, and you will never be overlooked again." Alara nodded, feeling the truth of his words in every fiber of her being. Her journey had begun in shadows, in silence, in mockery, but now it was a journey of power, courage, and destiny. She had embraced who she was meant to be, and the future stretched before her, bright and full of possibilities. Kaelin reached for her hand, and she allowed him to hold it. Not as a protector or a king, but as an equal, a partner, someone who had seen her, truly seen her, and believed in her. The warmth of his touch anchored her, even as the magic within her pulsed with life and energy. Together they stood at the edge of the tower, looking out over Elendor. The kingdom was theirs to protect, theirs to guide, and theirs to shape. Shadows still lingered in distant corners, but Alara no longer feared them. She had faced darkness and emerged stronger, wiser, and ready. And somewhere beyond the mountains and rivers, hidden in the whispers of the wind and the shadows of the forests, forces long dormant watched, waiting. But now they would wait in vain. For the Omega who had once been silent was no longer alone. She was strong, she was seen, she was unstoppable. Alara turned to Kaelin, her eyes shining with determination and newfound confidence. "I am ready," she said softly, yet firmly. Kaelin nodded, a rare smile touching his lips. "Then let us face what comes together," he replied. And together, standing in the silver dawn, they knew that nothing would ever be the same. The kingdom of Elendor had witnessed the rise of its true Omega, and the court had learned a lesson it would never forget. Strength is not always loud. Sometimes it is silent, patient, and unstoppable, just like Alara. The dawn was only the beginning. The world beyond awaited, full of trials, magic, and destiny. And together the Alpha King and the Omega would face it all, their bond unbroken, their hearts and power intertwined, ready to carve their own legend.